If you just started playing guitar or you're a self-taught expert, there are still some things you might be doing wrong. From as basic as holding your guitar right to as complex as sounding good, this video will hopefully teach anyone something new. So here are 5 techniques on guitar that you should know. First, the most important step when you get your first guitar is how you hold your guitar. This can make a difference. The most common beginner shape is the Stratocaster style shape, which I have here. This isn't a Stratocaster, but it's pretty much the same body shape. Obviously, this curve right here will go on your leg. You can either hold it classical style, is what they call this, or you can put it on your other leg and play it, this way. But are you holding your fretting hand right? Your fretting hand is one of the most important parts when holding your guitar, and it is important to have good technique. Bad technique can lead to pain, but most importantly, it can make you feel like you can't reach those hard to reach notes, but I promise you can. First, you usually want your hand and wrist to be level. You don't want to bend it like this, or like that. You kind of want it to be level with your arm. You don't want to create a harsh bend in your wrist, because that can create a lot of pain. Next, you want to make sure your thumb is in the right spot. Yes, your thumb. You want to take your thumb and put it in the middle of the back of your neck, but you want it to barely peek over the top. You don't want it to peek over a whole lot, but you want it to just be right in the middle with the tip of your thumb peeking above. And you obviously want your hands to go on the fretboard. Remember to keep your wrist level. Once you discover where to put your thumb, it'll actually be so much easier to reach these notes that you thought you couldn't get before. This leads us to our next tip, which is bending. Now, contrary to what I just told you, you want your thumb to be in a different position when bending, but these are the only 2 times you should ever move your thumb. When you're bending, you want your thumb to be on top of your neck, kind of anchoring for your other strings to get strength from. Now, it's important not to accidentally mute the bottom E string, but there are times when you can mute it on purpose and it will sound good. Also, guitarists like Jimi Hendrix and John Mayer will fret notes with their thumb, but I think that's a little crazy. Anyways, your fingers will make a huge difference in your bends. Instead of bending with one finger, you want to make sure you bend with all 3 of your fingers, maybe even 4, but mostly 3. You want to use your index, your middle, and your ring finger, and you want your ring finger to be on the fret you actually want to play. When you bend with one finger only, you'll lose so much strength and it is almost impossible to do full step bends. Now, the way you're bending your strings is also super important as well. You don't want to bend straight up, you kind of want to twist your wrist. Think of it like opening a doorknob. Now, the most important part of bending, more than technique honestly, is to be able to bend in tune. You want the note you're bending to actually be the note you want and not just almost there. A good way to practice this is to pick a note on the fretboard. You can pick any note you want. First, I'm going to pick the 16th fret on the G string. Now you want to go 1 to 2 frets behind this note you picked, which would, for my instance, it'd be the 14th fret. And now you want to practice bending to the note you picked. So now I'm going to try to bend the 14th fret to make it sound just like the note on the 16th fret. So. You can also add a little vibrato in there to make it sound better. Now practice this as much as you can. You can never practice this enough and it is super important. Next, are you holding your pick correctly? While technique is important here, it is also super important to find your own style. When you look at your favorite guitar players, you'll see that they all hold their pick just a little bit different. From Kirk Hammett's middle finger that literally flips you off, to James Hetfield's pinch technique, everyone holds their pick differently, but everyone still follows the same key principles. You want to make sure you don't have any harsh bends in your wrist that could be uncomfortable to play, with the exception of Marty Friedman. I don't know how he does it. This can cause a lot of pain if you're holding your pick in an awkward way. A good way to find a comfortable way to hold your pick is to take your finger and stick it out kind of like that. Take your thumb, kind of like you're pointing a fake gun or whatever, and you want to put the pick on your finger, on kind of like your middle knuckle, grab it with your thumb, and close it, hold it tight. And you want it You want the tip of your pick to barely be peeking through. You don't want it to stick out a lot, but you know. The next step that kind of relates to your picking hand is palm muting. This is a super important technique in most music styles, but most importantly rock and metal. I touched on this technique in my how to pick like jam set feel tutorial, but I can briefly go over it again. You want to take your hand and rest it on the bridge of your strings lightly. You don't want to completely mute the strings, but you do want it to have a nice tighter sound when you play. Now if you have a Floyd Rose or any type of floating bridge, you do want to be careful because it can be easy to bend your strings out of tune. See? So you don't want to push too hard, but you do want to lightly mute the strings. It will make a chunky, heavy sound. Next technique I'll tell you about is hammer-ons and pull-offs. This is probably the easiest one that I've talked about so far, but it is still important to know. A hammer-on and pull-off is pretty much what the name implies. You take a note and you either hammer on to the next note, or you pull off to the last note. This is pretty easy, but it is super important because almost every solo in the entire world does this. When you get some speed behind it, you can really sound like a master shredder without even trying that hard. You can also incorporate tapping in this, which uses hammer-ons and pull-offs with your finger. That should be it for the easiest techniques that most beginners should know, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment them, or you can DM me on one of my platforms and I will always get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching.